At the WHO's 77th World Health Assembly in Geneva, we talked to a wide range of leading figures from the international resistance against the WHO's plans for omnipotence. In this episode, you can see the two interviews with Del Bigtree and immediately afterwards with Kevin Stillwagon. Del Bigtree is an American TV and film producer and CEO of the Informed Consent Action Network, ICAN for short. Among other things, he produced the film Vaxxed, From Cover-Up to Catastrophe, which shows a connection between vaccines and autism. His webcast, The Haywire, was censored on YouTube in 2020. Del Bigtree is also currently communications director for the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. presidential campaign. Now it's time for a very famous interview partner, famous all over the world, Del Bigtree. Welcome and thank you very much for your time. It's a pleasure and a great honor to have you here. My first question: in 2016, you showed in your film Vaxxed the connection between vaccination against measles, mumps, and rubella and the development of autism.
Yeah.
Could you please explain this briefly for our viewers and also discuss the cover-up by the CDC?
So Vaxxed, really, it's a great movie and people should watch it, because it gets into the details, which I could talk about for some time. But very clearly, right in the late 1990s, early 2000s, was when this concern about the MMR vaccine broke loose, in England. Dr. Andrew Wakefield had made statements that he believed this combination, the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, all put together, looked like it was contributing to an increase in autism. Because that became like a wildfire in England, the CDC decided, and actually the Congress of the United States of America asked the CDC to investigate this vaccine and its connection to autism. So what Vaxxed is about one study that was done of, roughly 3,000 children from the Atlanta school area. They happen to be mostly African American, and there's a higher prevalence, it appears, of autism in that community. What it was a timing study. What they decided to look at was, if the MMR vaccine increases your risk of autism, then the younger you get it, does it make it more damaging or more likely to cause autism? So you have to understand, they didn't test a group of kids that got MMR and those that did not. It just those that got it early and those that got it later. Those were your two groups. And what they found was the children that got the MMR vaccine, at about 1 year old to 18 months, were about 4 times more likely to develop autism than those that got it after 3 years old. So simply delaying that vaccine made it less risky. It really, and so what's amazing about this study is that you have a design protocol. The way science works, and I didn't know this really till I got deep in the investigation, so that you don't have fraud in science, you have to lay out your protocol ahead of time. You have to write it down. Here's the group of kids we're going to look at. Here's what we're going to study. Here's our control group. Here's the test group, all of these things. And then you have to stick to that all the way through so that you don't change it because you're not getting the results you want. But that's exactly, when you talk about what the cover-up was, that's exactly what the CDC did. They started recognizing, and at the heart of our story and of our film is Dr. William Thompson. He was actually the epidemiologist that was charting all of the graphs and looking at these kids that they were looking at. What was their rate of autism, in each group? When did they get the vaccine? And he had to go to the group, it was about 5 scientists, and say, it's increasing. Like, we are seeing this dramatic increase, especially in boys. And so instead of shouting to the world, oh my God, halt everything, it does look like at least there's a correlation. Our study's showing it. Now, I won't say that study proved that the MMR causes autism, but it did scare that group of scientists so much that they committed fraud. And what did they do? They ended up kicking half the kids off the study. in the middle of the study said half of these kids not allowed in the study to try and dilute the effect so that they could say, well, there was a slight rise, but it was statistically insignificant. Why? Because you didn't have enough kids in the study. That's fraud. So they manipulated the study. And then when that didn't do enough, they started changing the age groups they were looking at after the fact to try and find a zone where it looked more even, make it happen a little bit later in the early group, a little bit earlier in the late group, so that you could even it out. So it's total scientific fraud. What's so shocking about it really is this is the last, it took place between 2000 and 2004. A study like this was supposed to be done in 6 months. Why did it take 4 years? Well, our whistleblower, Dr. William Thompson, says because we spent years manipulating the data, kicking kids off, trying to make this say what we wanted it to say instead of what it was actually saying. Now, what's so shocking is this is the last study ever funded by the United States of America looking at autism. And they use this study to say it's definitive, the MMR doesn't cause autism, when that study did anything but say that. It should have at least triggered more research, bigger studies, and instead they use this as the pinnacle of vaccines don't cause autism. Of course, I've gone on since this film to do multiple investigations, and I'm now give a talk where my nonprofit brings lawsuits against government agencies. We've also deposed a couple of the top scientists in the world on vaccinology, Dr. Stanley Plotkin, who wrote the textbook on vaccinology that's used all around the world. It's called Plotkin on Vaccines. I have him in a deposition. When under oath, they'll say vaccines don't cause autism. Show me the evidence. They have zero. There's no evidence. So when you hear that there's a mountain of studies that show that vaccines don't cause autism, it is not true. There are no studies. There's never really been a study that took unvaccinated kids and compared them to vaccinated kids and said, see, just as much autism in the unvaccinated group. That hasn't happened.
Unbelievable. Del, during the pandemic, you made very complicated issues easy to understand for a wide audience on your webcast, The High Wire.
Yeah.
In your opinion, was this the reason for the censorship on YouTube, or are there other reasons?
I think it's the reason. I mean, ultimately, they had to shut down, anyone understanding what was really going on, what governments were against them, or, the fact that they were being lied to, the rushing out of the vaccine, all those things that we covered. We now know that the Biden administration actively pressured social media companies to censor. But yes, I think that we were effective at getting our ideas across. And now, given that I stood proudly on video cameras stating where all this was going to go. I mean, we said that this vaccine would not stop transmission one day before the entire world got it. Not because we're psychic, not because I had a crystal ball, but because we were looking at the emergency use authorization put out by the FDA. And we looked, what does it say about transmissibility? It says the studies were unable to determine whether this could stop transmission or not. But I'm watching the TV say it's 95% effective, and I just showed everyone in my audience, they're admitting it's not 95% effective. They're admitting they don't have any idea how effective it is. Now, I lost my YouTube channel, lost my first Facebook channel, but then luckily last year you had Janine Smalley in front of the European Union, one of the Pfizer executives, asked exactly that by Robert Roos, saying, did you test to see if it could stop transmission? And she just says, no, we were moving at the speed of science. What's so amazing about that, just to probably get off track for a second, in America, and I'm not sure about Germany and other places, but I'm pretty sure it's similar, the PCR tests, and they're ramming these Q-tips up everyone's noses. We had children that couldn't go to school without having that rammed up their nose once a week, some of them every day. I had friends that worked in Hollywood, on set, that would get tested in the morning and in the afternoon. And so there's this invasion of our experience, having to prove that we, weren't symptomatic or weren't even infectious. And here's what's amazing. While all of us were being tested like crazy to try and do daily functions or even get outside of our house, there was one place on earth that you didn't have to be PCR tested every day. There was one place that they said, we're going to make sure that doesn't happen to you, where you're protected. You know where that was? In the trials for the vaccine, for Pfizer and Moderna. The one place they should have been testing them every day to see if the vaccine worked. Are you, catching the disease or not? That's the one place they didn't test anybody. I mean, how outrageous is that?
Yeah.
It's so unbelievable.
Yes,
it blows my mind.
In a recent article on your website, thehighwire.com, was stated that mRNA vaccines against avian flu are currently being produced for poultry as well as for humans. Is avian flu possible the mysterious disease X that WHO boss Tedros spoke of?
Look, it's a theory, right? At the moment, we won't know until they tell us this is disease X, but it sure looks like they're putting a lot of energy behind this avian flu. It's also, once again, one of these bioweapons they're making in labs all across America, and I call it a bioweapon. They are messing around with what potentially could be one of the most dangerous viruses, trying to make it more infectious, more viral, more deadly. Why are we doing that? I mean, look at COVID. I mean, what you have to realize with COVID, the coronavirus had really barely any ability to affect human beings. It's why the original SARS coronaviruses didn't kill that many people and died off. It's just not that infectious. Very deadly, but it's hard for human beings to catch it. We inserted in a laboratory, it appears, I mean, look, this is what the reigning theory is. I lost a YouTube channel for predicting this back when it was only a theory, but thinking sure is suspicious that this all breaks out right around a lab where they're playing with this virus. But now we see the insert of this furin cleavage site, which means, it can attach to the furin all through our bodies, makes it highly infectious. So you took a virus that can be dangerous, but just couldn't infect human beings, and you made it so that it could. And then that gets out of a lab. It's amazing how little we talk about this, that we ended up fighting, whatever you think it is, in the end, it was really bad for old, sick people. The rest of us did just fine. But this virus is not dead now. It is now mutating, and it, in many ways, we evolved it 15, 20, maybe even 100 years in a laboratory and then released it. And now it's starting there. And this is where it's gaining function. If you look at what Geert van den Bosch is saying, very, very scary that this virus, because we vaccinated everybody, we were unable to kill it. We were unable to actually eliminate it from the planet. So it's still going. And now it has a function it never had before. That's what they're doing with the bird flu. What happens if a bird flu that you're messing with gets out of a laboratory? So what I would say is this. We are living in a world of what we call fear porn, right? This is what's taking place. Really just be sensible for a moment, because they are making us so terrified of infectious disease that we cannot see straight. But realistically, has anything really changed in the world that viruses that didn't kill us since the dawn of man suddenly will tomorrow? That we know tomorrow, it's like predicting the earthquake where California is going to fall in the ocean. It's going to happen this year, and you've all got to lock yourselves in your houses. That's how crazy this is. That's how crazy all this is. Viruses and bacteria and human beings, we are all evolving together. And as long as we're evolving together, it doesn't matter what function it gains, we are working to evolve too, right? But if you make it jump, if you're using labs to make it jump, that's what's dangerous. Not the natural viruses. Why has a natural virus not wiped our species off the planet up until now? And why is the WHO so sure that there's going to be another pandemic when they used to be every 50 years, but now 1 year after COVID, we're ready, it's going to be the bird flu? If they say that to you, you got to be suspicious. You've got to say this just isn't, what did the earth open up and now viruses pour out of some hole in the earth? It's not logical. We've stepped outside of logic and reason. If we were logic and reason, you want to end a virus, you want to end your fear of pandemics, turn off your freaking television. Just stop listening to it. It's baloney.
Yeah. We're here in Geneva. Let's talk about the WHO. Where do you see the greatest dangers of the now delayed WHO pandemic agreement and the amendment to the international health regulations?
Well, look, the danger is any globalist group of people that have no interest in the sovereignty of your body or the sovereignty of your nation. They want to tear down the borders of the world and dictate to all of us how we're going to respond to situations. We saw how that worked during the pandemic. It's amazing to me that we're going to let an international body fail its way forward. What did they deliver for us? What did they do during this last pandemic? They said we need to be able to act faster. Really? To be stupid faster than you already were? Because nothing they said was right. The millions and millions of people that were going to die by the graphs that came out of the Imperial College were wrong, right? In the end, we had a death rate of 0.35%. We went absolutely haywire for what appears to be your average and maybe a bad flu season. But we ended up destroying more lives with lockdowns, more lives with vaccination. We don't even know the toll those vaccines are going to take. We still have excess all-cause mortality all around the world at abnormal levels. You've got to look at that. When in the world has every nation seen a rise that they cannot explain in all mortality? So you were wrong about how deadly it was. You were wrong that the vaccine would stop transmission. Lockdowns and social distancing, Tony Fauci and now Francis Collins, head of the NIH, have both admitted had no basis in science whatsoever. It was just made up. So you destroyed our jobs, destroyed our livelihoods, destroyed our economies on a made-up concept, but now you want even more power to do that faster? They must really think we're pretty stupid.
That doesn't make sense. But one more question about this topic. Do you think the WHO will be able to push through its plans?
No. And I think that the only way it could will be that the member states give up on any concept of a democracy or a republic or freedom or liberty or, capitalism, if you will. Will they get enough states to say that the sovereignty of our individuals don't matter and we're just going to force this on them? Maybe, but just like the WHO is a desperate grasp of power, I think any government that signs away the lives of the people just lost its relevance to those people. So I dare them to do it. I dare them to do it because the people of the world are now watching. This has, it woke us up. Thank God. I'm so happy for the WHO treaty because in America, that caused every Republican senator to sign on to a treaty against them. Senators that normally would look the other way, that I couldn't get a meeting with, wouldn't listen on vaccine issues, wouldn't even think COVID vaccine was a danger. Now they're realizing it is. But this WHO treaty, it woke up half of my leadership in America. Thank you very much, WHO treaty. Now we have people that are listening. Now we have leaders that recognize, oh my God, maybe sovereignty isn't the overall desired plan by all of the people in this government here. It's waking up the world. You need that pressure. You need that tension. So keep bringing it because all they're doing is waking up more and more people. And when we're awake and when we realize we outnumber them, this tiny group of sycophants, then they cannot win. So I want to see this to the end. I don't want to see us go back to sleep. And if the WHO has to keep bringing pressure for us to be awake, I hope that's not the case. But what we should be doing is voting out anybody that even thought about signing that thing, that ever even showed up into this town. Don't reelect them. Elect people that are fighting for you, that believe in you. And let's change the world right now.
My final question will be a personal one. Dale, you are repeatedly attacked and defamed in the mainstream media. How do you deal with that, and what drives you to carry on regardless with that unbelievable power?
I see attack as victory. If they're talking about me, it means that I'm having an effect. And I know who my enemies are, and if all they're doing is talking about me, then I know I'm doing my job and that we're getting through to people. Because if I wasn't, I wouldn't be in the newspapers. They wouldn't be talking about me. They're talking about me because the work that I'm doing, people are listening to it. And I don't care what name they call me. I only care that I'm able to prove what I'm saying, that my evidence stands the test of time. And just recently, I get interviewed by New York Times, Washington Post. They'll even say to me, you spread, conspiracy theories. What was the latest one? Was it Washington Post? Now, I forget what it was. It was Politico. I think it was Politico. Anyway. they'll all say the same thing. You spread conspiracy theories, like, name one. Name one. You mean the fact, like, lab origin? Is that the conspiracy theory? Because you got that wrong. I didn't. I got that right. Oh, was it the effectiveness of the vaccine? You got that wrong. Your paper got that wrong. I got that right. Oh, was it that social distancing had no basis in science? Oh, wait, you pushed that. I said it was a lie. So what conspiracy theory are you talking about? Right? See, what I love is history. I love my place in this world, and I know that it doesn't matter what name you called me. I have all the videos of what you said, and you have all the videos of what I said, and I like how my information is aging, and that's all that I care about.
That's a good way to handle all that stuff. Thank you very much for your time. It was a great pleasure and a great honor to have you here, Dale. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Good talking to you, Thomas.
Not only physicians, scientists, analysts, and media representatives took part in the workshop against the WHO. Kevin Stillwagon, an airline captain, was also among the participants. Kevin piloted the largest jets for more than 3 decades and is now an active member of the Pilots of Freedom Association. It was only natural to ask him about the health of pilots and crew after COVID injections. Now it's time for an airline captain and also a member of Pilots Association, Kevin Stillwagon. Welcome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Thomas. It's my pleasure to be here. The organization is called the U.S. Freedom Flyers.
U.S. Freedom Flyers.
U.S. Freedom Flyers.
One hears of rumors that pilots and crew have healthy problems after they were forced to get vaccinated. What do you know about that rumors?
I know that it's not a rumor because we're getting firsthand reports of pilots and flight attendants that are suffering from myocarditis and also other issues, neurological problems that can all be tied directly to the known adverse reactions of this shot. In fact, before the shot even rolled out, they had a list of what was called adverse events of special interest, things to look for. And myocarditis was on the list, and so were some neurological problems that pilots and flight attendants and even air traffic controllers are experiencing right now. And so what we're trying to do at U.S. Freedom Flyers is find out exactly why the FAA would allow a product like this to go into pilots and other flight crew members knowing full well what the ramifications could be. So we need to get down to the bottom of it, find out why that happened, and make sure that this never, ever happens again.
Are there no statistics by the airline companies of those incidents and accidents?
Yeah, there are statistics, and these are closely held by the airlines. One of the statistics that I know for sure is that there has been about a 300% increase in pilots that are going out on disabilities since 2021, since the shot rolled out. And this has happened at Delta Airlines, where I was previously employed. There's also indications that it happened at American Airlines and also Southwest Airlines, which are 3 of the largest airlines in the United States. Also, I have compiled statistics on pilots that are dying earlier than is expected. The normal retirement age for a pilot is the age of 65. And prior to the rollout of this shot in 2021, the incidence of pilots dying before the age of 65 was about 14%. Since 2021, there's been a 40% increase in that number. So temporarily, it can be, associated with the rollout of this shot.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Do you have documents that prove these numbers of incidents?
I do have documents, yeah. The document that I have confirming the early pilot deaths is in a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet that I keep updated on a monthly basis. Because the Airline Pilots Association, which is the largest pilot union, does keep records of pilot deaths. And so I'm able to compile all of that data and keep track of and show clearly that there was an uptick in the incidence of pilots that are dying earlier than is expected. As far as the pilot disabilities, I do have printed documents that came out of the unions from those airlines that clearly show that there's an increase in pilots going out on early disability. Yeah.
With that knowledge, what do the pilots demand from the airlines?
There's a problem with pilots having their medical certificate, okay? So it's a pilot's responsibility to report health problems to his or her aeromedical examiner. And if you report a problem that could cause loss of your license, your ability to hold a medical certificate, then that's a career ender for you. So there are some hard lines in the sand here. One of them is myocarditis that I already mentioned. If you're diagnosed with myocarditis, you're done as a pilot. You can't fly an airplane of any size. And the reason is because you could have a sudden cardiac failure. You don't want to see that happen to a pilot, but it is happening. Also, incidents of seizures. That's another hard line in the sand. If you have a seizure as a pilot, that's a big deal, because it can put what's called an uncommanded and unexpected full flight control input that the other pilot may not be able to overcome. And if that happens, you're going to have loss of control of the aircraft. So yeah, these are big deals. So we don't want to see those things happen, okay? So we need to start doing something now to screen pilots to see if they maybe have these issues. So what the pilots are going to demand from their companies is say, hey, look, you forced us to get this shot that had these known adverse reactions that could cause the end of my career. Therefore, we need to have some assurance from you, the company, that forced us to do this, that if I come forward or if there's a screening program that starts and it finds something physiologically wrong with me, then you're going to have to support my career. You're going to have to financially, support me for the rest of my known career. Otherwise, my career is over. You see?
One of the most important questions our viewers ask themselves is, has flying become more dangerous?
Flying is still extremely safe. It's one of the safest modes of transportation. And as pilots, we are trained for the incapacitation of the other pilot. We're trained for this. We have to go through simulator check rides every 9 months. Sometimes it's every year. And these are scenarios that we go through because it's something that, although it's rare, it can happen. So the other pilot is fully capable of landing the aircraft safely, even if the other pilot has gone completely unconscious. But the problem, and I already mentioned this, the problem is going to happen when you get a seizure. It's called a tonic full body seizure that happens in one pilot that could possibly put an unexpected flight control input into the aircraft. The other pilot's not going to be able to immediately overcome that, and you'll have loss of control of an aircraft. So although flying is still safe, there are indications now that some of that safety is beginning to erode. We're seeing that with more reported pilot incapacitations that are coming through. We're also seeing it with increased aircraft incursions, which we sometimes call near hits. In other words, aircraft are getting too close to one another. There was an uptick of that occurred in March of 2023. It was noted by the FAA. They sent out what's called a safety advisory for operators to all airlines that carry passengers and say, hey, look, we've got this indication that aircraft are getting too close to each other, and we need to really pay attention. We need to train our flight crews to be more aware. And this responsibility also falls upon aircraft traffic controllers, air traffic controllers, who were also mandated to get this shot.
Kevin, when you enter the aircraft to fly back home, what about your feelings?
Yeah, sometimes I get a little nervous, but again, I mentioned that flying is still safe. And I want to make sure everybody understands that.
And with you on board, you're still able to fly though?
I can still fly, yeah. I still hold a license to fly an aircraft. But I haven't flown a large aircraft in probably, it's been about 4 years now. but it's kind of like riding a bicycle. It's something you don't forget. So,
Thank you very much for your time and the interesting information.
my pleasure. Thank you so much.